First contact through frequencies. Commander Xyrix couldn't shake the peculiar vibrations coursing through the hull of their patrol vessel. After 16 cycles of monitoring the outer reaches of the Centauri trade route, they'd encountered plenty of oddities, but nothing quite like this. Status report on the unknown vessel. Xyrix chittered to their sensor officer, Trell, whose crystalline appendages flickered with uncertainty. The ship registers as the Cosmic Rhythm, Commander. Human designation, but... Trell's voice trailed off as another wave of vibrations pulsed through their ship. These emanations are unlike anything in our database. The human vessel hung motionless against the backdrop of stars, its hull gleaming under the distant light of Alpha Centauri. No distress signals, no standard communications protocols, just these persistent, rhythmic pulses that seemed to bypass their ship's dampening systems entirely. "Patch me through to Central Command," Xyrix ordered, their secondary eyes narrowing as they studied the vessel's unusual configuration. The standard procedure would be to mark it as a potential threat and call for reinforcements, but something about these vibrations felt intentional. The holographic interface sparkled to life, revealing Admiral Nex's stern visage. "Report, Commander." "Admiral, we've encountered a human vessel exhibiting unusual behavior. They're transmitting some form of energy signature through their hull. Permission to initiate closer contact?" The Admiral's facial tentacles writhed in thought. The humans have been peaceful trading partners for 3 cycles now, but proceed with caution. What kind of energy signature? Before Xyrix could respond, their ship's AI interrupted. Analysis complete. The emanations appear to be something humans call bass, a component of their music. The patterns suggest a genre they refer to as electronic dance music. A collective moment of confusion swept through the bridge crew. They'd heard of human music, of course. It was mentioned in their cultural briefings. But experiencing it like this, as a physical force, was unprecedented. "Commander," called out Navigator Krill, their bioluminescent patches pulsing with excitement, "I'm detecting movement within the vessel. Multiple life signs congregating in what appears to be the main cargo hold." Xyrix made a decision. "Admiral, I request permission to lead a boarding party. If this is some form of cultural display, it could be diplomatically unwise to respond with military force." After a tense moment, Admiral Nex agreed. "Granted, but maintain quarantine protocols. The last thing we need is another incident like the coffee contamination of 2184. As Xyrix led their team through the docking procedure, the vibrations grew stronger. Their exoskeleton resonated with the rhythm, creating an unusual but not unpleasant sensation. The human ship's airlock cycled open with a hiss, releasing a wall of sound that their suit's audio dampeners struggled to process. Inside, they found something unprecedented in all of galactic history. A cargo hold transformed into what their cultural database identified as a nightclub. Hundreds of humans moved in synchronized patterns under pulsing lights, their bodies responding to the music in ways that defied xenobiological understanding. At the center of it all stood DJ Nova, her hands dancing across holographic interfaces that controlled not just the music, but the very vibrations they detected. She noticed the boarding party and grinned, adjusting a dial that brought the volume to a more manageable level. "Welcome to humanity's first interstellar rave," she called out, her voice carrying genuine warmth. "We figured, why wait for formal cultural exchange programs when we could bring the party to you?" Xyrix's translator struggled with the word rave, but the concept was beginning to make sense. This wasn't a military action or a trade mission. It was an invitation. Over the next several hours, Xyrix watched in amazement as their crew, despite their initial reservations, began to understand. The music wasn't just sound. It was a form of communication that transcended species barriers. Even Trell, usually the most reserved of the bunch, had discovered that their crystalline appendages could create fascinating light patterns in sync with the base. When they finally submitted their report to Admiral Nex, Xyrix struggled to maintain proper military formality. How does one officially document the start of an interstellar dance movement? In the end, they settled for the truth. "Admiral, it appears the humans have discovered something our species have long overlooked, that rhythm itself might be the true universal language. Request permission to establish regular cultural exchange protocols with the Cosmic Rhythm and her crew. And sir, you might want to experience this for yourself. As Xyrix ended the transmission, they noticed their appendages were still moving slightly to the beat. Somewhere in the cargo hold, humans and aliens were learning to dance together, creating a moment that would change galactic society forever. The Cosmic Rhythm's mission was just the beginning. Across the stars, other human ships were preparing to launch similar, cultural expeditions. The galaxy was about to learn that when it came to bringing people together, humans had mastered a force more powerful than any weapon. The universal power of music. The Rhythm Revolution. 3 months after the Cosmic Rhythm incident, the Galactic Council's Cultural Advisory Board faced an unprecedented crisis. What had begun as a single human dance party in deep space had sparked a movement that was rapidly spreading across 17 star systems. The situation is becoming untenable, announced High Counselor Vress, their luminescent crests flickering with agitation as they addressed the emergency session. Holographic displays showed scenes from across known space. Alien nightclubs opening in former cargo bays, makeshift concerts in space stations, and perhaps most alarmingly, young Xerillians experimenting with something humans called breakdancing. Ambassador Rook of the Meridian Alliance leaned forward, their metallic scales catching the light. Our youth are particularly susceptible. Just last week, my own offspring requested permission to attend something called a music festival on Proxima B. The council chamber erupted in concerned murmurs. On the massive viewing screen, footage played of the latest phenomenon. A human DJ named Marcus Stardust Williams performing aboard the converted freighter Bassline Voyager. His audience consisted of 12 different species, all moving in harmony to Earth's electronic rhythms. In the back of the chamber, junior cultural attaché Pip watched with barely concealed excitement. Unlike their older colleagues, they saw opportunity where others saw chaos. Their specialized auditory membranes still tingled from the underground concert they'd attended last night. A secret show where a Drachnid jazz quartet had collaborated with human musicians to create something entirely new. Perhaps, Pip ventured, causing several council members to turn their sensory organs in surprise. We're approaching this from the wrong angle. The humans aren't imposing their culture, they're sharing it. And our people are sharing back. To demonstrate, Pip activated their personal datapad. The chamber filled with a haunting melody. Traditional Meridian crystalline harmonies seamlessly blended with Earth's classical orchestra, creating something that couldn't have existed before first contact. This piece was composed by human musician Jade Rivera and Meridian sound sculptor KYX. It's currently the most streamed song in 3 sectors, Pip reported, their tendrils waving with enthusiasm. High Counselor Vress's disapproval radiated in waves of ultraviolet light. And what of our traditions? Our cultural purity? From the human delegations section, Cultural Ambassador Diana Thompson stood. Her presence was always striking, not just because she was the only human in the chamber, but because she had a way of commanding attention without domination. With respect, High Counselor, Diana began, culture isn't meant to be preserved in stasis. It's meant to grow, to evolve. What we're seeing isn't the death of traditions, it's their evolution. She gestured to a new holographic display, showing various scenes. A group of Arcturian monks incorporating Earth's classical piano into their sacred ceremonies, young Valorians using their bioluminescence to create light shows for concerts, and quantum engineers from 6 different species collaborating on something they called cross-dimensional harmony. The Rhythm Revolution, as it's being called, Diana continued, isn't about humans teaching the galaxy to dance. It's about all of us learning new ways to express ourselves together. In orbit above them, aboard the recently established cultural exchange station, Harmony Point, the revolution she spoke of was in full swing. The station had been converted from an old trading post into the galaxy's first dedicated arts and music center. Its corridors resonated with the sounds of experimentation. In Studio 7, a human violinist named Raphael worked with a Quantisian soundweaver to capture the music of quantum fluctuations. 3 decks below, in the movement center, a Xerillian dance instructor taught their unique form of gravitational manipulation dance to an eager class of mixed species. But perhaps most significantly, in the station's central hub, construction had begun on the Galactic Harmony Chamber. an ambitious project designed to accommodate musicians from every known spacefaring race. Its acoustic properties would adapt to any form of sound production, from subsonic Jovian whale song to ultrasonic Valorian crystal chimes. Back in the council chamber, the debate raged on. Yet even the most conservative members couldn't deny the data. Diplomatic incidents had decreased by 40% in regions where cultural exchange concerts were regular events. Trade agreements were being signed on dance floors. Ancient enemies were finding common ground in music appreciation societies. Ambassador Rook, despite their earlier concerns, found themselves swaying slightly to the rhythm of the demonstration piece still playing softly in the background. Perhaps, they admitted, there is something to be said for this cultural cross-pollination. As if to punctuate their words, a notification flashed across the chamber's information screens. The Bassline Voyager had just announced its Beats Across Borders tour, scheduled to visit 30 star systems over the next standard year. Advance tickets were already sold out in 28 of them. High Counselor Vress looked out at the chamber, their crystalline form reflecting the myriad holographic displays of this new, evolving galaxy. It seems, they said slowly, we must either adapt to this rhythm revolution or be left behind by it. In the stations, ships, and worlds beyond the council chamber, the revolution continued unabated. Humans and aliens alike were discovering that music wasn't just a universal language. It was a bridge between worlds, a diplomat that needed no translator, and a force that could turn strangers into dance partners with a single beat. The galaxy was learning to dance, and there was no turning back. Harmonic discord. The protest outside New Shanghai's Interstellar Cultural Center drew crowds from across the galaxy. On one side, demonstrators from the Coalition for Cultural Purity waved holographic signs decrying the sonic corruption of traditional values. On the other, young beings of various species gathered in support of what they called the Universal Beat Movement. Elderkvax of the Silicon Consciousness floated above the crowd, their crystalline form pulsing with waves of disapproval. For 10,000 cycles, our species communicated through pure geometric frequencies, they broadcast. Now our youth distort their resonance patterns with human bass drops and synth waves. Below, young silicon being Val, 12 rolled their photonic eyes. They'd recently joined Crystal Frequency, a fusion band combining traditional silicon harmonics with Earth's electronic music. Their latest track, Quartz Core Remix, had gone viral across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. Inside the cultural center, Security Chief Rashid Hassan monitored the situation with growing concern. After 15 years working interstellar security, he'd learned that cultural clashes could escalate faster than a quantum surge. His holographic displays showed similar scenes playing out on dozens of worlds. The great chorus of Betelgeuse 7 refusing to incorporate new harmonies, Jovian elders objecting to their youth's adoption of space rap, and the meditation masters of Rigel demanding silence zones in all public spaces. Chief, called Lieutenant ZYX 427, their mechanical appendages clicking with urgency, we've got a situation in Concert Hall 3. The Conservative Harmonic League is threatening to disrupt tonight's performance. Hassan sighed. Tonight's show was supposed to be groundbreaking, the first ever collaboration between human jazz musicians and the telepathic symphony of Alpha Centauri. Deploy sonic dampeners and get me a direct line to both group leaders. But before he could act, something unexpected happened. From Concert Hall 3, a sound began to emerge. Not the chaos of conflict, but something new. The jazz quartet, led by renowned trumpeter Marcus Blue, had begun playing alongside the telepathic harmonies of the Centaurians. The result was astounding. The protesters outside fell silent as the music spread through the building's audio systems. Elder Kvax's crystalline structure began to resonate involuntarily with the harmonies. Val, 12 watched in amazement as their elders' geometric patterns synchronized with the jazz rhythm. The music was speaking in a language beyond words or thought, a fusion of Earth's soulful improvisations and Centaurian psychic harmonies. It told stories of stars being born, of civilizations rising and falling, of the eternal dance of cosmic forces. In the security center, Hassan received reports from across the facility. The Conservative Harmonic League members were swaying to the music. Silicon beings were forming spontaneous geometric patterns that complemented the jazz rhythms. Even the most ardent cultural purists found themselves caught in the spell. Dr. Liang Wei, the center's xenomusicologist, rushed into Hassan's office, her eyes bright with excitement. "Chief, you need to see these readings. The combined frequencies are creating patterns that match the fundamental vibrations of spacetime itself. They're literally playing the music of the universe." As the performance continued, something unprecedented occurred. The telepathic Centaurians began broadcasting the emotional impact of the music directly into the minds of all present. Humans and aliens alike experienced not just the sound, but the pure feeling behind each note, each harmony, each moment of improvisation. Elder Kvax descended slowly to meet Val, 12. Their crystalline surfaces reflected the shifting lights of the cultural center. Perhaps, they transmitted hesitantly, there is wisdom in new resonances. Our ancient harmonies need not be lost to be enhanced. The breakthrough performance lasted 3 hours, but its impact would echo across generations. Recordings spread rapidly through the galactic networks, spawning countless new collaborations and fusions. The Conservative Harmonic League renamed itself the Progressive Sonic Alliance and began hosting workshops on cross-species musical integration. In the following weeks, similar scenes played out across known space. On Rigel, the meditation masters discovered that certain human ambient music actually enhanced their spiritual practices. The Great Chorus of Betelgeuse 7 released a revolutionary album incorporating influences from Earth's classical traditions. Even the Silicon Consciousness began experimenting with rhythmic vibrations in their communication patterns. Dr. Liang documented it all, her research revealing how music was doing what centuries of diplomacy couldn't, creating genuine understanding between species. In music, she wrote in her famous paper, Harmonic Convergence, the physics of cultural unity, we find not just common ground, but common soul. The resistance hadn't disappeared entirely. Change never comes without friction. But something fundamental had shifted. The galaxy was beginning to understand that tradition and innovation could coexist, that new harmonies didn't erase the old ones but built upon them. As Hassan finished his shift that historic night, he found himself humming an old Earth blues riff that somehow perfectly matched the crystalline resonance of the silicon beings heading home. The universe, it seemed, had always been waiting for these harmonies to merge. Outside, Val, 12 and Elder Kvax floated away together, already discussing plans for a new kind of concert. One that would honor their ancient geometric frequencies while embracing the wild, wonderful rhythms of Earth. The harmonic discord was resolving into something greater than either side could have imagined alone. The Universal Symphony. The massive space station, Harmonious, constructed specifically for the first Galactic Music Festival, hung in orbit around neutral space at the convergence of 7 major trade routes. Its design was unprecedented, a series of interconnected spheres that could adjust their acoustic properties for any known form of music in the galaxy. Festival director Talon Reed stood in the central control room, her heart racing as she watched ships arrive from across known space. After 3 years of planning, countless diplomatic negotiations, and engineering feats that had pushed the boundaries of physics, the moment had arrived. "Status report," she called out to her diverse crew. The festival would begin in less than 6 hours. "Quantum resonance chambers are calibrated," reported Chief Engineer NXV, their biosynthetic tentacles dancing across holographic controls. "We can handle everything from Andromedan gravity songs to Zalaxian plasma harmonies." "Security grid is active," added Lieutenant June Park, his augmented eyes scanning multiple feeds. "We've got representatives from over 300 species attending. Some of them traditionally try to eat each other, but they all signed the Harmony Accord." The Harmony Accord had been a stroke of genius from the diplomatic corps, an agreement that within the festival's boundaries, all species would communicate primarily through music. It was amazing how many ancient conflicts seemed trivial when you were trying to maintain a steady beat together. In Sphere 1, the Rhythm Collective, a groundbreaking ensemble featuring musicians from 27 species, was running final sound checks. Their instruments ranged from traditional human drums to Valorian light harps and quantum resonators from the Silicon worlds. The group's leader, master percussionist Ibrahim Santos, worked with ZYX-Tau, a gas-based being from the Orion Nebula, to synchronize their tempos. The challenge wasn't just musical. ZYX-Tau experienced time differently, perceiving what humans called a minute as roughly equivalent to a week. They developed a revolutionary system using quantum entanglement to align their musical perceptions. The subsonic frequencies are properly calibrated. ZYX-Tau's translator hummed. Our vibrations will speak to the smallest microbes and the largest space-dwelling creatures simultaneously. In Sphere 2, the voice of the cosmos choir assembled, beings who communicated through everything from radio waves to gravitational pulses, united in harmony. Their rehearsal sent shivers through the station's quantum-stabilized frame. Dr. Harmony Zhou, the project's lead xenomusicologist, monitored the readings with tears in her eyes. We're seeing harmonic patterns that mirror the fundamental frequencies of the universe itself, she whispered. It's like we're tapping into the original music of creation. As the start time approached, an unexpected crisis emerged. The crystalline consciousness representatives reported that their resonance patterns were being disrupted by an unknown frequency. For a species that lived and breathed pure geometric sound, this was potentially catastrophic. Talon rushed to the engineering bay, where NXV was already working with human acoustic engineer Dr. James Morrison. They discovered that the station's protective shields were creating a subtle interference pattern. "We can't lower the shields with this many ships in proximity," June warned. "The gravitational dance would tear us apart." Then, from the crystalline delegation, young Val, 12, now famous for their pioneering work in silicon-human fusion music, made a suggestion. What if we don't fight the interference? What if we incorporate it? Working with Ibrahim's Rhythm Collective, they began to adjust their performances to match the shield frequency. The interference pattern became a bass line, a foundation upon which they could build something entirely new. As the festival opened, the station itself became an instrument, its shields, structure, and even its recycling systems contributing to a symphony that could only exist in this precise moment, with these precise beings, in this precise place. The first performance began with silence, a moment of cosmic quiet that made every species present lean in with whatever they used for ears. Then, slowly, impossibly, the music began. It started with the quantum harmonies of the silicon consciousness, their pure geometric frequencies creating a crystalline foundation. The Orion gas beings wove their time-stretched melodies through this structure. Human instruments, drums, synthesizers, strings, and brass added layers of emotion and rhythm. The Valorians painted with light and sound simultaneously, their bioluminescent displays synchronized with the music. Gravity singers from the gas giants of a dozen systems added their profound, space-warping voices. The voice of the Cosmos Choir brought it all together in ways that defied conventional physics. In the control room, Dr. Zhou's instruments were registering phenomena never before recorded. "The harmonies," she reported, her voice trembling with excitement, "they're creating stable micro-wormholes. The music is literally connecting different points in space-time." The performance built to a crescendo that transcended traditional concepts of sound. It was music you could see, feel, taste, and think. It told the story of every species present, their hopes, their fears, their dreams of the stars. For a brief, beautiful moment, every being on the station experienced existence through each other's senses. When the final note faded, a process that took nearly an hour due to the time dilation effects of ZYX-Tau's contribution, there wasn't a dry eye, or equivalent sensory organ, in the station. The Universal Symphony had done more than create music. It had proven that harmony could exist between any beings, if only they took the time to find the right frequency. The festival would continue for 3 weeks, but everyone present knew they had already witnessed the birth of something unprecedented, a truly universal culture that celebrated both unity and diversity. As Ibrahim Santos embraced his alien collaborators, carefully, in the case of the gas beings, he grinned. "You know what this means?" he asked. "We're going to need a bigger station for next year." Resonance of Unity. The Galactic Council's emergency chamber crackled with tension. Holographic displays showed the Drachnid war fleet approaching the human colony of New Harmony, their ship's energy signatures pulsing with hostile intent. The conflict had erupted over a misinterpreted signal, a human deep space broadcast that the Drachnids perceived as a territorial challenge. First Admiral Rixus of the Drachnid fleet had already rejected 3 diplomatic channels. Their species communicated primarily through complex harmonics, and something in the human broadcast had struck a deep, primal chord of aggression in their collective consciousness. Time to weapon range, 17 minutes, reported Strategic Officer Patel, her hologram flickering above the council table. The colony's shields won't withstand a full Drachnid assault. Then, from the back of the chamber, a quiet voice spoke up. What if we answered them with music instead of weapons? All eyes turned to Professor Jean Wong, Earth's foremost expert on xenoharmonics. Behind him stood Lyra, a young Drachnid music scholar who had studied at the Terran Conservatory of Interstellar Arts. The broadcast that triggered this, Jean explained, activating a holographic sound wave, contains frequencies that mirror ancient Drachnid war songs. But with Lyra's help, we've composed something new. In orbit around New Harmony, the massive festival station, Harmonious, still floated, its quantum resonance chambers humming with potential. It had been preparing for the second Galactic Music Festival when the crisis began. Council President Rivera's eyes widened with understanding. The station's broadcast range covers the entire sector, Jean finished. And after last year's festival, it's calibrated to handle every known form of musical communication. Time was critical. As the Drachnid fleet approached, Festival Director Talon Reed orchestrated the most ambitious performance in human history. Musicians from 12 species took their positions in harmonious chambers. The Rhythm Collective, led by Ibrahim Santos, synchronized their instruments with Drachnid harmonic patterns, broadcasting in 3, 2, 1. The music began with the deep, resonant tones of traditional Drachnid war hymns, frequencies that vibrated at the very core of their species' consciousness. But then, subtly, it began to change. Human jazz elements wove through the harmonic structure. Crystalline harmonies from the silicon consciousness added layers of mathematical beauty. The voice of the Cosmos Choir contributed their multidimensional harmonies. Aboard the Drachnid flagship, First Admiral Rixus felt their chromatic scales vibrate in response. Their species experienced music not just as sound, but as full-body resonance. What started as familiar martial rhythms transformed into something that spoke to their deepest ancestral memories. The music told a story of first contact, of misunderstanding, of the beauty found in difference. It spoke of the mathematical precision of space itself, of the dance of atoms, of the songs stars sing as they die and are reborn. Most importantly, it spoke of harmony, not as the absence of discord, but as the beautiful resolution of different voices finding common ground. In the council chamber, Lyra's scales shifted through a rainbow of colors as she conducted, her movements guiding the massive collaboration. Jin's fingers danced across quantum controls, adjusting frequencies to match the subtle shifts in Drachnid bioresonance. The Drachnid fleet slowed, then stopped. On every ship, crews found themselves moving in rhythm with the broadcast. The music bypassed their tactical minds and spoke directly to their harmonic souls. This wasn't surrender. It was conversation, conducted in the oldest language in the universe. First Admiral Rixus's voice, when it finally came through the comm channels, resonated with new understanding. We have misread the songs between our stars. Perhaps it is time for a new harmony. The turning point came when the Drachnid ships began to respond, their hull resonators, normally used for war songs, adding their own voice to the growing symphony. What had started as a last-ditch effort to prevent war became the largest spontaneous musical collaboration in galactic history. Ships from other species, drawn by the broadcast, arrived to join the performance. The Valorians added their light songs, creating aurora-like displays between the assembled fleets. Silicon beings contributed their crystalline frequencies. Even the enigmatic deep space singers, rarely seen at diplomatic functions, arrived to add their gravitational harmonies. Hours later, in what would become known as the Symphony of Peace, representatives from both sides met aboard Harmonious. Traditional diplomatic protocols were set aside in favor of a joint musical performance. First Admiral Rixus and the human colony's governor played together on a newly designed instrument that combined Drachnid harmonic principles with human melodic structures. The crisis had been averted, but more importantly, something new had been created. The event sparked the formation of the Interstellar Harmonic Council, dedicated to using music not just as entertainment, but as a fundamental tool of diplomacy. Professor Jean Wang, watching the Drachnid and human musicians collaborate on a new piece, smiled. Music, he noted in his journal, reminds us that the space between stars isn't empty, it's filled with songs waiting to be heard, if only we learn to listen. The Galactic Music Festival, when it finally began a week later, had a new opening ceremony, a piece called Resonance of Unity, performed jointly by Drachnid and human composers. Its score, written in both traditional notation and harmonic wave patterns, would become one of the most studied pieces of music in galactic history. As the last notes faded into space, First Admiral Rixus turned to Council President Rivera and said something that would be recorded in every diplomatic archive. Perhaps all our species have been evolving not just to reach the stars, but to learn their songs. The humans had done more than share their music with the galaxy. They had helped discover a universal language of peace. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, countless new harmonies waited to be found.